to Parliament now from thing. He started Parliament and passed the second bill, which he said he was basing on Albert Magai's previous bill, and therefore he cleared the hurdles and he could now declare a republic. That's what he did, he declared it a republic. But when he arrested me, he didn't tell the fellows that, my wife didn't know. He told people that I had brought arms with me when I came back, and he wanted to make sure that I did not use those arms. So they were taking me away. They didn't tell my wife where to. In the end, he took us to Pademba Road, but they searched the house from top to bottom, thinking that there must be arms there. They found nothing. So here I was languishing in Pademba Road when my wife heard about a week afterwards that I had not been taken to Guinea. They were afraid that they would take me to Guinea and put in one of those horrible prisons and just languish there till death. When they found out I was at Pademba Road, they asked if they could do anything for me. She said, oh yes, you could send him laundry if you want to, but don't let the prisoners, you could send your laundry to home and you could take care, but you would not be allowed to see him. And I was there more than half of the time I spent before they allowed her to have the first visit with me. Anyway, that's how I went to Pademba Road prison.
What was that like?
Oh, terrible, terrible. When I went to Pademba Road, we each had single cells, every one of us, because they didn't want two together to form anything. And the only place I had was a mat to sleep on the cement floor. A mat to sleep on the cement floor. The thing which hurt me mostly was my own church people. The Muslim leaders would come and they would be allowed to have prayers with their people. Rena, who was the pastor of my church, who was a close friend of my father and of me, he never paid one single visit to me while I was in prison.
He's probably afraid to.
He was not afraid to, but he was also a very close friend of Shaka Stevens, and he didn't want to jeopardize that. One of the lady missionaries, an American missionary, asked permission if she could send me a Bible, and she did. That was the only book I was allowed to have in prison.
You were there how long?
140 days.
Oh my God.
In Pademba Road. But another thing, these are funny things, you must know what happened. And now, just recently I've been in touch with what happened. There was a Sierra Leonean who was a dentist who qualified after I returned to Sierra Leone, and he came back and was a dental officer in Sierra Leone. And as medical and dental officers, they had a right to come to visit prison if something was happening. So he came to visit prison, and I told him I have some trouble because at that time I was having partial dentures. And he says, you know, doctor, what I can do for you? You tell me that you've not had a chance to see your wife at all this time you've been here. Why don't you complain that you have a serious toothache next time I come? And I will tell them that I don't have any equipment here, so they must bring you to Connaught Hospital, to my office there, and I will take care of you. And while he did that, he sent a message to Rina saying, I've arranged for your husband to come and see me. If you come half an hour before that, I'll take you to my office and you will sit down there hidden when he comes, so you'll have a chance to talk to him. This doctor is now passed us, he's gone, and he arranged that. This happened, I saw Rina. Now his son, this is also very interesting, his son has become one of these Indian gurus. He calls himself Swami. He and his wife have started a residence in Florida. They bought, I forgot what it says, something like 127 acres, which is built a Swami residence.
Oh, jeez.
And I got an email message only last week, says he's inviting me to go and celebrate his father's death, who died several years ago. Since his father told him about me, he'd like me to go. So this is how things go. Anyway, that's not part of our story. But I'm just telling you how I saw my wife after those days. You asked me about Pademba Road. Yeah. It was terrible. Finally, again through the doctors, they said, look, you can't treat Dr. Karefa-Smart this way. For one thing, he's a physician. He cannot last long in prison lying on the bare cement floor with only a mat. You must at least give him a bed. So they brought one of these iron beds with no mattresses. They always put the same mat on top of the iron bed, and that's where I spent until. And you know how I got out? You know the story. Amnesty International heard about me. Amnesty International heard that I was detained in prison. No charges. They asked what are his charges. No charges at all. We're just keeping. So they said, look, we don't like this. We don't treat any prisoners this way. They didn't tell him this. They just sent the message through Amnesty International. Send letters, anything you can, to Sierra Leone and ask why Karefa-Smart is being kept without any charges. So Stevens was bombarded with these letters, cables, etc. from Amnesty International. He got fed up and sent a message, make it go. They just came and opened the prison and said, you can go. So I knew that if I stayed, it would be dangerous. So I decided to leave. Immediately after I left prison, after I failed to have an appointment to talk to him and he refused, I left the country. That is the end of that story.
Well, the business of executing fauna, Bashtaki,
yes.
and it seems like
Now,
after...
if I had still been with them when they were released from prison, they would have said I was part of a coup d'etat too, but I was out of the country.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's why the little Pona girl, whom Rina and I have to bring her up, because while her mother was without any kind of help, they came and visited us. She brought them, we were staying in Massachusetts then, and she and her brother visited us, and so she knew us from that time when she grew up. So when she was writing her book, she came again to visit us and wanted to confirm some of the things she'd heard about her father. At that time, their English mother had left and gone back to Australia or New Zealand, which is where they came from.
Well, it's very likely that you might have been...
Oh, there's no
Something
doubt
like
with
that.
Stevens, I would have been exactly
Yeah,
the same.
because the following year he executes John Bangura.
Yes.
And
No, with John Bangura's thing, that's another story altogether.
what is that?
I was back at home when, because John Bangura, I got him back from here to go and help him, etc. And when everything was in order, he brought back home. He was actually head of the army at that time, because my guy's brother-in-law was out of the picture. So I was visiting Stevens, and Stevens was very friendly as usual, very nice, etc. Then one day while we were sitting in our place, he said there had been a coup d'etat, attempted coup d'etat. People had come to his house and tried to kill him, but for some reason or other they did not succeed. And next day, he said he was sitting in, not in Parliament, but in the Prime Minister's office near the Governor General's house. He said they came again and shot all over the place, but they missed him. And so now it's a state of emergency. Twice they've made an attempt at him, and John Bangura is the head of the army, so he must do something about it. And he arrested him, and he killed him.
Well, then we get to S.I. Karoma.
He is the one I was telling about, I forgot his name. He was Stevens' evil man. Everything Stevens wanted to do, instead of taking the responsibility, he would ask S.I. to do it. So they called
S.I. Karoma.
He is the one I was telling about, I forgot his name. He was Stevens' evil man. Everything Stevens wanted to do, instead of taking the responsibility, he would ask S.I. to do it. So they called him Agba Setani, meaning the servant of Satan. Like one occasion, the time when he really did something to us, he left the country and went to East Africa on a visit. And in his absence, Agba Setani did what he wanted him to do.
What was the legacy of Shaka Stevens? What did he to Sierra Leone?
Well, we'll say the good things first. He was the one who accepted the generous contribution of the Russians to train some of our people who would have had no chance to get to university someplace. He accepted this Russian people, and I imagine dozens of them. I don't have any record, but he gave them a good training, and the Russian training was quite good, except in medicine. When I was in WHO, I visited some of the students in Soviet Union, and I found out that their qualifications in the Soviet Union, especially in medicine, where you got your degree, but you had to have only one specialty. You were trained in that one thing, you knew nothing else. And so out of that, because they had so many of them, they had so many, they could send them all over, almost like the foot doctors in China. So that's what happened to the Sierra Leoneans who trained in medicine. They came back qualified people, but only in one specialty. So when they arrived and the Creole brothers said, no, we cannot accept you this way, you must either serve under us until you learn other things, or we'll send you off country. They did not like that. This is what happened.
What other good traits did he have?
Well, that's one good. Second good trait, nil. Absolutely no. He was just a man. He was not evil in that sense, but he just was not interested in other people. If things didn't go well for him, he wouldn't do well.
People have told me that he didn't take anything seriously.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, only himself. He took himself seriously, but nothing else important. Whether the country was going to the dogs or not, it didn't matter. He was prime minister. He was.
So
unfortunately for him, he was never president.
So there were no barriers to what he could do.
No barrier, and therefore, at the same time, no plans for the country. There were no development plans, no 5-year plan, 10-year plan to see where the country was going to go.
He destroyed the railroad.
Again, unfortunately, due to the Creole influence. A fellow who was one of the chief Creoles and also a high member of the lodge, which was another one of their things of thing, told him that this railroad is old-fashioned. If it were a modern railroad, it was about a 2-foot railroad. Let's get rid of him. And Chaka Stevens accepted his word. And then they sold all the rails to this fellow who later is another cause of troubles, Tahir Mohammed Jamil, an Afro-Lebanese. His mother was from our part of the country, north. His father was Lebanese. But he, because of his skills, got lots of money, diamonds, etc., etc. And they sold all the things to him, and he sold them to China or Japan or something. Destroyed the railroad completely.
And what was the relationship between Jamil and Charles?
Money. Anytime Stevens wanted money, he could get it from Said Jamil. But another thing, more bad than that, I didn't want to get to it, but you asked me. The relationship was this. Said Mohammed Jamil would say to Stevens, listen, you cannot just stay like this. You've got money, we'll give you some money. Let's buy property in Las Palmas, let's buy property in England, and it's all yours. When finished, you'll have it. And so I said, go ahead, do it. And they would go and buy the property in Las Palmas, come back and say, you see, we bought you a hotel, a house or two in Las Palmas, they're yours. Go to England, we bought you a house there, it's yours, etc. When Stevens died, you know what he found out? All those were in Said Jamil's name. He had absolutely nothing. So he died a pauper, literally a pauper. He had nothing left to him. All his money, he had trusted these people to deal for him on his behalf, and in the end it turned out he had nothing.
Was he, what did he die of, SchulzeThis?
I don't know. He died in such a poor physical condition that people were even ashamed to go and meet him in his place. They still allowed him to stay up in his former house, because Momo didn't want to go there.
Yeah. Now, was there anyone that Chaka Stevens listened to?
A close friend? Not that I know. If we would find such a person, then we would all turn and blame him. But none. He just did things his own way. The Lebanese, of course, were his friends because he let them do anything they wanted as long as they took care of him, as the saying would be.
How did he rate the title doctor, or was that just
some stupid? No, first of all, he got one from Freemake College as president. They made him a doctor. And then some of the supporters here, they did a stupid thing, ask Harvard University of all people to invite him to go to, I think they were going to give him some kind of, but they staged a coup, they staged a protest there, which